Star Wars Squadrons has just gotten a new patch, and it's all about starfighter gameplay balancing that targets specifically the B-wing and the TIE Defender. There is a lot of changes to get into, so let's get right into the video. We mentioned a couple of days ago that the Star Wars Squadrons devs were going to look at the B-wing and the TIE Defender and tweak their gameplay accordingly. We got this news when the A-wing nerfs dropped. And whilst those were definitely needed for the A-wing, they wanted a bit more time to figure out exactly what they wanted to do with the B-wing and the TIE Defender. The reasons being that the B-wing is just not very good in terms of mid-tier and high-tier play, and with the TIE Defender being a little bit overtuned for high-tier and pro-level play. So, what are the changes that have been made? For the B-wing, they've had an increase in boost charge rate by 100%, an increase in boost loss rate by 500%, an increase in boost activation cost by 100%, and decreased maneuverability penalties on all primary weapons by 33%. For the TIE Defender, they increased the shield overcharge decay rate by 10%, shield charge rate slowed by 20%, boost loss rate increased by 100%, and boost activation cost increased by 25%. So for this video, as you can tell in the thumbnail, we're going to be focusing mostly on the B-wing changes. We'll do a video just like this one for the TIE Defender, but we need some pro-level players to weigh in their opinions. But for now, let's focus on how this changes the B-wing and perhaps why you might want to play this ship. So first things first, this is a server-side only change, meaning you will not see these buffs in practice mode or in versus AI fleet battles. These buffs will only account for dogfighting games and fleet battles against players. So the reason for these particular changes to the B-wing is mostly to help B-wings get to their objectives. The main issue with B-wings when it came to objective play was that it was just too slow or too easy to hit as it was trying to fly to, say, the Artisans or the Star Destroyer. So the fact that you can get out of the hangar of your flagship, overcharge your shields and then put them straight into engines, it means you can reach full max reserve of boost far quicker than you used to. This means B-wings can get to the objective much faster after they've been deployed. However, this reserve of boost will decay much faster if you put any energy into any other component. So if you put all power to shields, that means you'll lose out on all your boost much faster. This will definitely make components like Resonant Shield a lot stronger for the B-wing if it wasn't already. This means the player only has to focus on whether or not to put full power to shields or engines, because once you have max overloaded shield, you begin to overcharge your lasers as well. This allows players to have more time dedicating to putting all power to engines. That means we can skirt around the nerf of the boost loss rate being increased. Whilst increased boost loss rate by 500% sounds like quite a lot, the increased boost charge rate by 100% is a lot more impactful. When playing these new changes in dogfighting mode, I found that I was a lot more maneuverable by being able to have a lot more boost to play around with. Whilst yes, this could allow you to boost straight to the objective as fast as you can, I mostly found that I had a lot of boost to use to drift into different directions and avert firepower. And whilst it does suck that I have to lose all of my reserved boost when I put full power to shields, as soon as I put it back to engines, I find that I'm able to just drift immediately. So whilst maneuverability and acceleration wasn't necessarily buffed in any way, which I was actually expecting it to be, they've actually put the buff into the regenerating of boost charge. So whilst this does necessarily fix a bit of a weakness the B-wing has, it requires you to play a lot more of the B-wing and really understand how the ship works to get the most out of this buff. And I don't think that's necessarily bad per se. Boosting the maneuverability and acceleration would be a very plain buff. And what I mean by that is everyone benefits from it. As soon as they pick up the B-wing again, even though they've only played it like 3 times, they'll instantly feel the buff. And those type of buffs can get ugly very quickly, because once players pick up the B-wing and then they realize this buff is really good and they keep playing it until they get really good with the B-wing, suddenly that buff is way more stronger than it intended to be. But by tweaking the boost charge and loss, it requires the player to actually get good at the B-wing to feel those buffs, which means that the top of the skill ceiling has only gone higher rather than bringing the base players up a bit. I think a lot of people are expecting more in terms of B-wing buffs. But the reality is we're only looking at numbers here, and I think a lot of people that wanted B-wing buffs probably don't even play the ship at all. All I can recommend is try it out in a few dogfighting games and really get a feel of how it moves, because it is a big improvement than it once was. But fear not, there is one other buff that I have not mentioned to the B-wing, and honestly it's probably the biggest buff of the lot. Decreased maneuverability penalty on all primary weapons is down by 33%. I don't know if any of you have played the B-wing recently, but I recommend playing the B-wing in practice mode with the rotary cannon and then play it again in a dogfighting game. You will feel a massive difference. This solves one of the weakest points of the B-wing, which was dogfighting accuracy. It had a lot of firepower in its primary weapons, and it can melt away ships very fast. And obviously, since this is so powerful, it makes sense there's a 33% maneuverability penalty when you have the rotary cannon, and then mix that with the B-wing, which already has very low maneuverability to start with. But this allows you to even take on interceptors in some cases. Even if you're just dumb firing and hoping that they'll go into your line of fire, you can really hurt interceptors. And don't even get me started on TIE defenders either, because those ion lasers will strip the shields of any TIE defender. And actually, I think this is one of the main reasons why the Star Wars Squadrons devs actually buffed this. In a way, I think some people might pick up the B-wing just to counter TIE defenders. And the reason I think they'll pick the B-wing over the A-wing is because they don't have to have a loadout dedicated to TIE defenders. And then once the TIE defenders are gone, they have to go back and change to a different loadout, etc, etc. So this will be very, very interesting. I still think the B-wing is just not good enough at taking down the capital ship, at least in pro play, absolutely not. But I definitely think it'll be amazing against the enemy raider while on defense, but more importantly, be even more effective against the cruisers when in attack phase. Overall, I do think this is a very safe buff to the B-wing, despite the maneuverability penalty being removed from the rotary cannon. And the reason I say this is because EA Motive is fully focusing on their next project. So the worst thing they want to do is make an update that everyone dislikes, and then they have to come back to the project again to see what went wrong. So when I look back at that, I think I am a bit incorrect about expecting a maneuverability buff. It's just too much of a solution for what should be the biggest weakness of that starfighter. The only other change that perhaps I might have included is to make the Gyro Orcs module a little bit more useful. And what I mean by that is not necessarily change its purpose, but add an extra bit of functionality, which would be to change the angle of your ship a lot faster. This could be amazing for pro players who would use it to evade firepower from anybody that was targeting them. Just constantly changing their hitbox in a circle might actually be a bit harder to hit than you think. Not to mention that the B-wing is already big enough anyway, and I feel like that would be a very safe change because it would only really apply to high tier and pro play. And we all know the B-wing has definitely seen none of that recently. But either way, I totally understand these changes from the Star Wars Squadrons devs. I think I'll be trying this out in fleet battles and using it as a capital ship damage rather than my X-Wing capital ship damage build. However, once both of those cruisers are down, I'm just going back to the X-Wing. There's no point in using this ship against capital ships, I feel. One loadout I see myself using quite a lot will probably be primary weapon rotary cannon, left auxiliary gyro orcs module, right auxiliary proton bomb, countermeasures particle burst, hull standard hull, shields resonant shield, and engines as thrust engine. Now, I'm not entirely sure about my left and right auxiliary. Those will probably change the more I play the B-wing, so don't think of those as gospel because I'll likely change those down the line. But for rotary cannon, I think it's really strong now the maneuverability penalty's been removed. Standard hull I think is really important because you do not want to put any percentage negatives to your hull because you've got so much of it. I think you can get away with reflect hull because you can maybe get away with about 10% removed from your hull, but dampen a hull 30% is just way too much and it's not worth it. For shields, the resonant shield will probably be one of the best ones you can equip for the B-wing. It's totally made for it. I think this is even better than the standard shield compared to the other two that are just not that great for the B-wing anyway. Whilst it's really nice to have that max speed to get to your objective a lot faster, with the big nerf to boost decay on the B-wing after this patch, gotta say, maybe the slam engine might be the way to go, because you're always going to be passively charging up your boost no matter what, so you completely negate that nerf altogether. The issue is, how bad is that max speed nerf? That's something I'm definitely gonna have to test out in future games, and who knows, I might make another B-wing loadout video if it warrants it. Let me know if you want that one in the comments down below. If I see enough requests and enough likes on this video, I will certainly try and put something together.